G'day, mate. 40 here. So, I think you know that I'm God's most humble servant, that, I came from a place of light and love, but I was sent here to this fallen world to bring a message of hope and redemption and salvation. So here I am. I'm traveling down Pico Boulevard. I'm at about Pico and Roxbury, right by the Museum of Tolerance. And, I'm spiritually centered. I'm thinking about God, how to bring God's message into the world of truth and justice. And I'm thinking about this week's Torah portion. And as I go by this intersection, there's this big billboard for vaginal confidence. Like, here I am. I'm thinking about God. I'm thinking about the things that are true and holy. I'm thinking about the eternal verities. And I'm assaulted by this billboard on vaginal confidence, and there's kind of a tasteful picture of a vagina, and I was not looking, I was not expecting, I was not really seeking, I was not welcoming a billboard about vaginal confidence. How have we gotten to a point where we got billboards for vaginal confidence? Right? Something's wrong. Now, I'm not a big believer in triggers, so I wasn't triggered, right? That didn't disturb me, all right? So there's a billboard for vaginal confidence. It's not like I'm going to go home and make a video about it and go, oh, this is what you need to feel more confident with your vagina, right? I mean, I'm not going to be stimulated by that and go, oh, vaginal confidence, that reminds me of the Medica versus Fuentes debate. I mean, I'm not going to use this as some cheap attention-grabbing trick. Right? I'm not going to allow this to trigger me, take me out of my place of spiritual centeredness and sexual, emotional, romantic sobriety. All right? I'm not going to do that. But I was intrigued. What the heck is vaginal confidence? And as Glamour Magazine UK says, 5 empowering ways to boost your vaginal confidence. Josh Randall, you look like the type of bloke who could benefit from boosting his vaginal confidence. So, number 1, look at it, right? So many vagina owners are held back by a lack of self-esteem. 44% can't identify their vagina on a medical diagram. So many of us are self-conscious about an area we've never properly seen. So, grab a mirror, open yourself up, and take a good look at your vagina. Gently spread your labia and take in its delicate shape and deep colors. This is you, and you are absolutely perfect. Not only is looking at your vagina empowering, it is also key for keeping on top of your health. So it's not just good for you psychologically and spiritually, it's also good for you physically. It's really important to know what is normal for your vagina, to have a good knowledge of how you look. So you'll be quick to notice when something has gone awry. This is good because if you take a good look at your vagina, you'll quickly notice when something enters it that probably shouldn't, when it's not really in your spiritual, physical, mental, emotional well-being. Right? Something's entering your vagina that's not really good for you. So this way you'll be much more attuned. So you'll be able to notice when something's entering your vagina that's not really in your best interests. All right, practice self-love. Right? It's natural, it's healthy, and it feels great, says Glamour Magazine. It offers a host of health benefits from relieving period pains to reducing stress and improving sleep quality. And it improves your chances of orgasm with a partner and improves sexual confidence. Great. Now, do you have a vagina playlist on your iPhone? Right? There's great empowerment to be found in lyrics about the vagina. Right? There are songs like Softest Snow by My Bloody Valentine, Peaches and Cream by 112, She Bop by Cyndi Lauper, Work It by Missy Elliott, Body of My Own by Charlie XCX, Love Myself by Haley Steinfeld, Kicks by FKA Twigs, Doves in the Wind by SZA feat Kendrick Lamar, Go to Town by Doja Cat, and I Can't by Foxy Brown. Right, so here I've given you 3 tips to empower your vaginal confidence. Number 4, talk about your vagina. So wherever you go, just start talking about your vagina. It will be a hit. So whether you're in synagogue, you're in church, you're at a business meeting, you're in your profession, you're in court, you're meeting a new client, just start talking about your vagina. Like, try opening up. Talk about something that's worrying you about your vagina. Make a joke about your vagina. Just simply use the word vagina. Just put vagina in as many sentences as you can. Instead of saying private parts, just go vagina. Right? You'll be amazed at how much impact speaking openly about your vagina has on your confidence. And number 5, respect the power of your vagina. Right? If you haven't yet learned to love your vagina, right, you can take comfort in the fact that it definitely loves itself. Vaginas are masters in self-care. Like, vaginas are showing us the path forward. All right? Okay. This is from The Little Book of Vaginas by Anna Walker. Have you bought and read that book? Okay, looking at the comments. It's amazing how everyone thinks Nick Fuentes' main intention behind the Medica discussion, it was just an intellectual discussion, was simply to win the debate. Do you honestly think Nick hates how everyone on YouTube and Twitter, platforms he's being completely banned from, are making him quite relevant again? Guess what? You can become relevant, and it's not in your best interests. There are all sorts of ways you do not want to become relevant. Right? There are all sorts of situations. There are all sorts of YouTube discussions. Right? There are all sorts of social media discussions that might make me relevant, but would not be in my best interest. Not everything that makes you a topic of discussion is in your best interests. Right? It's not just things that I've said and done in the past that would not benefit me if they were highlighted in some new YouTube discussions. There are all sorts of YouTube discussions that could go on right now. There are shows I could go on. There are debates I could participate in. There are panel discussions that I could join that would not be in my best interests. So there are all sorts of ways that you can put yourself forward, right? That you can come out of hiding and be visible that are not in your best interests. I just don't see how this discussion with Medica was really in Jim's best interests. Okay, another comment. 1 minute, 35 seconds is about the correct amount of time to waste on that display of narcissism, female bitching. Please don't return to this topic. Art Bell comments, 9 hours and 24 minutes into the PPP Andy Warski discussion of the Fuentes versus Medica debate. America First is dead when Nick raises $50 a show. Number 1 message, avoid having the Freds go after you. Donors get terrified. Baked Alaska took the deal. All info will be surrendered. Okay, so I'm reading a book by Joseph Caro on Lyndon Johnson, right? The Path to Power. Is that the name of this book? So it's basically The Passage of Power, and it's about Lyndon Baines Johnson, 1960 to 63. And I didn't realize how miserable Lyndon Baines Johnson was between 1960 and the Kennedy assassination, because he'd been pushed out by the Kennedy clan, right? They wanted nothing to do with him, even though he was essential for getting John F. Kennedy elected in 1960. The Kennedys and their staffers wanted nothing to do with LBJ. They despised him. They made fun of him. He was a subject of mirth. And he used to be the power broker. He used to be the power guy in the United States Senate. He was the majority leader in the United States Senate for many years. So he's used to having this position of power. But everything's situational. He changed his situation, and he went from a man that people feared to a man that people openly derided, right? So people just treated him like trash in the Kennedy administration. All right, so he was the guy, and then he became the subject of derision. And then he thought his career was over. He didn't think he would even be on JFK's ticket in 1964. You know, he couldn't believe how his life fell apart. When he went back to the U.S. Senate to try to reestablish a power base in the U.S. Senate, like, senators just didn't want much to do with him. They were just purely polite, and then moved on. He tried to establish a connection with John F. Kennedy. He tried to assert a power base in the Kennedy administration, and that was denied him. There was nothing, nothing for him to do. He was just considered a loser and a reject. And then being considered a loser and a reject, that had a profound effect on how he felt about himself, how he conducted himself, how he walked, how he talked. Like everything he did was affected by this widespread opinion that was plastered in newspapers that he was now a loser and a reject and had no power and influence. Then Kennedy gets assassinated, all right? And suddenly everything changes. He becomes a man transformed. So to his secretary, he was a changed man. She couldn't understand why he looked so different from the Lyndon Johnson for whom she'd been working. And I mean, this is true for you too, right? You can get on a losing streak, and that's going to affect how you talk, how you walk, how you think, how you conduct yourself. Your world's just going to get smaller. You're going to make yourself smaller. You're going to become, weak and awkward. And then you get on a winning streak, right? And those problems go away, and you start getting confidence, and your life becomes completely transformed because situations have transformed so that you're now operating in a confident, successful way. Okay, the chat says Emerson Palmer Lake. She opened for the Scorpions. So who is Emerson Palmer Lake? Oh, Emerson Lake and Palmer, you mean, the group. It's a progressive English rock supergroup formed in London in the 1970s. Okay, I don't know anything about them. Ever heard of Zoe Keating, the cellist? Zoe Keating. Cellist, composer, and performer. She's from Canada. She's 50 years old. Okay, no, don't know anything about her. All right, back to Lyndon Baines Johnson. So he's looking like a total loser for 3 years. And then he's a man transformed because the situation's changed. He's now president of the United States, right? She can't understand, his secretary can't understand why Lyndon Baines Johnson looks completely different from the Lyndon Baines Johnson that she used to know, right? The very movements of his body were different. When you start winning, the very movements of your body change. And then as the movements of your body change so that you're more graceful and confident, you start winning more. When you start losing, the movements of your body change to become more awkward and you start losing more. And the way you move affects your thinking and your emotions, just like your emotions affect the way you move and your thinking. Right? So LBJ, when he became president, the very movements of his body changed. Instead of that awkward, almost lunging strides and flailing movements of his arms that had characterized Lyndon Baines Johnson under tension, now his stride was shorter. Right? Most people would benefit from a shorter stride. It would be smoother. His movements were more measured. His arms were staying by his side. They were hardly moving at all. There was no flailing about. Have I watched Oliver Stone's JFK Revisited? No. Where would I find that? So I did find that a very entertaining movie. I think I've seen it 2 or 3 times, though, as you know, I don't believe in any of the Kennedy assassination conspiracies, except for the one that perhaps there was some kind of interaction at the Cuban embassy in Mexico City a few weeks before the assassination. So when Johnson became president and he walked around, it's a new documentary on Showtime. Thank you. I'll look it up. Okay. There was no flailing, only his head moved. It wasn't just that there was no flailing emotionally. There was no flailing physically, right? When you're flailing emotionally, JFK Revisited Through the Looking Glass. It is a Showtime documentary, declassified files about the Kennedy assassination. Okay, I might check it out. But I mean, if it's pushing, oh no, it's Oliver Stone revisits the JFK assassination. That's going to be nonsense. All right. So when you stop flailing emotionally, you stop flailing physically as much. When you stop flailing physically, you stop flailing emotionally. All these things go together. So when Johnson moved, when he walked about after becoming president, only his head moved. His arms weren't flailing around. He didn't have these lunging strides. There's no flailing emotionally, no flailing physically. It was as if he was actively controlling his body. When you have more confidence, when you have situations where you feel in control, that gives you more confidence over directing yourself. Right? He had none of the impatience that was usually present. He had none of the anger and rage into which his impatience so often morphed. Okay, so you can be prone to anger and rage because you're losing in life. You get on a winning streak, the situations change so that you're winning, then the rage and the impatience minimizes, if not disappears. Right? So the emotions that characterized LBJ prior to the JFK assassination for the 3 years prior, they didn't characterize him after the assassination. His voice is not so much low, but it is level. It doesn't fluctuate in tone. His voice isn't flailing around. He's keeping his voice under control. He's calm. He's developing an iron control. Right? I've never seen him as controlled, as self-disciplined, as careful, and as moderate as he's been this week, the first week after the Kennedy assassination, Bill Moyer says. He's remained calmer. He's been more careful to sort out and reason his feelings and his thoughts, and he's been good to work with. You know how he used to often thrash around and blow his top so often? Seemed like he had a clock inside him with an alarm that told him at least once an hour it was time to go chew somebody out, but he hasn't lost his temper once since 2 p.m. last Friday when he became president of the United States. So the situation changes you. You become a rabbi or you're asked to speak in a synagogue or a church, that setting will change you. The architecture of that setting will have more effect on how you behave and how you speak than any so-called essential personality trait. So the journalists who had seen Lyndon Johnson at his most cantankerous in times of lesser stress, were wondering what sort of tantrums he must be having now that he's the most powerful man in the world, as the immense pressures of his new job and the necessity for seizing his new job start bearing down on him. But every inquiry brings the reply that there are no tantrums, no cursing, none of the glass throwing, none of the vicious rages. Right? There was no crack in his calmness, no crack in his aura of command, no crack in his sense of purpose. Right? The reporters who'd covered LBJ for years are now startled by what they see. He's direct, calm, deliberate, composed, collected. He handled what came up. He progressed matter-of-factly through his day. He's studied. He's calm. He's thinking things through. So change the situation, you change the man. I love that. That's from the Joseph Caro biography of Lyndon Baines Johnson. Okay, there's one more book I want to talk about, The Extended Mind. So this just came out in 2021. The Extended Mind by Annie Murphy Paul. She's a journalist, but she talks to a lot of academics, like people who really know what they're talking about. So what happens when we reason alone? Right? I am a much better thinker because I'm doing these shows. Right? When we reason alone, we get into much more trouble. And now I can't find it. I was going to share with you like some amazing insights, and I had it all queued up, I thought, and I can't find it. The Extended Mind, right? Book came out 2021. It was a New York Times recommended book, like a top 10 book. It opened up about the profound effect that reasoning together with other people has on us. Oh, come on. Such a good book. When we reason alone. Right. We think much better when we think with other people. I'm strongly incentivized to get my stuff together. Right. When when I'm going to be engaging with you on here. I have much more incentive to think clearly, to take into consideration different perspectives. And it changes you, right? Wow. Just when I needed this most. Just when I talk about the power of no, it's supposed to be here. The extended mind. Where are you? Man, this is embarrassing. Annie Murphy Paul. So when we reason together, right, you make a point that I would never have thought of. Right? There are all sorts of perspectives I would never think of on my own. That's the upshot. And so we think much more clearly when we reason together, when we argue from a place of seeking the truth. That's the upshot. Oh, here we got it. Right? When we reason alone, just inside our heads, we will be dangerously vulnerable to confirmation bias. Right? We will construct the strongest case for our own point of view, and we will fool ourselves in the process. Right? It's very easy. We did not evolve. Right? We did not evolve to think through, abstract questions clearly. We evolved to shore up our own self-esteem, to, feel good about ourselves and our own decisions. So our thinking is a flawed superpower. Right? That's the traditional approach to thinking, is a flawed superpower. But Hugo Mercier, right? The one who said we're not born yesterday, right? The one who said that we did not evolve to be gullible. So he's got a whole different theory from the traditional one about how we think. So we did not evolve to solve tricky logical puzzles on our own. So we shouldn't be surprised by the fact that we're no good at it, right? We're no good at breathing underwater, right? We didn't evolve to be breathing underwater. We didn't evolve to be figuring out tricky logical puzzles on our own. What we did evolve to do is to persuade other people of our views and to guard ourselves against being misled by others. So reasoning is a social activity. It should be practiced as a social activity. So this is from their 2017 book, The Enigma of Reason. Right? People are capable of stringently evaluating the validity of other people's arguments. They are terrible at evaluating the validity of their own arguments. Right? And both of these tendencies are fully predicted by the argumentative theory of reasoning, because we have every reason, every incentive, every evolutionary reason to closely examine the arguments of other people, because other people might be out to exploit us or to manipulate us for their own ends. But we have few inducements to scrutinize the arguments we make ourselves. Being completely convinced of our own arguments, of our own thinking, of our own case, only makes us more credible to others and a better live streamer, right? And gives us more confidence and energy to go through life. So expending a lot of effort picking apart our own argumentation not only isn't necessary, right? We are much better off when we can rely on our sparring partners to conduct that audit for us. So you are constantly conducting an audit of my thinking, right? When you present challenges in chat or in comments or in email, right? You're auditing my thinking, and that makes me a sharper thinker, right? Our own reasoning faculty with regard to our own ideas is weak, but we are much better when we reason socially. When we reason alone, just inside our heads, we are vulnerable to confirmation bias, right? Constructing the strongest case possible for our own point of view and fooling ourselves in the process. So thinking alone is how thinking is usually done, and it usually has really bad results. But by thinking together and arguing together with the aim of arriving at some kind of truth, we're much better off. Bye-bye.